Welcome to your ultimate pit stop, Piston Pundit. Ever since Donald Trump reignited his trade wars, America's soybean farmers have been caught in the crossfire. What began as tariffs and retaliation has now evolved into a permanent shift in global supply chains. China, once the top buyer of U.S. soybeans, is turning to Brazil, Argentina, and Canada, leaving American producers watching markets slip away. With the 2025 harvest approaching and export windows closing, the pressure is mounting fast. In this video, we break down how it started, where it stands now, and here are the developments. From boom to breakdown, the U.S. soybean market's fading grip on China. For years, U.S. soybean farmers thrived on China's massive demand. More than half of America's exports were shipped east, fueling livestock feed, poultry production, and oilseed processing. That dominance began to crack during Trump's first trade war from 2018 to 2020, when tariffs and retaliation slammed the market. China hit U.S. beans with steep duties, suspended licenses for exporters, and actively sought new suppliers. The 2020 Phase 1 deal promised relief, with pledges to boost U.S. agricultural imports, soy included. But Beijing fell short, while South America seized the moment. Investments in Brazil, Argentina, and Uruguay expanded production, modernized infrastructure, and made their crops cheaper and easier to move. By mid-2025, U.S. farmers were forced to watch Chinese buyers commit almost entirely to South American shipments for the 2025-2026 crop year. Not a single forward booking was made from American silos during the critical September to January export window. What was once a dependable trade engine has now sputtered out, leaving U.S. farmers exposed in an unforgiving global market. But tariffs didn't just open the door to rivals, they created a lasting roadblock, which brings us to how U.S. policy itself backfired. Tariffs backfire when protection becomes punishment. Tariffs were pitched as a shield for American farmers, meant to pressure China into fairer trade terms. In practice, they've backfired. Beijing responded with steep retaliatory duties, around 23%, that erased any price advantage U.S. soybeans held. Even when American beans looked cheaper on paper, importers in China found it easier to turn to Brazil, Argentina, or Canada. The damage shows up in forecasts. USDA projected 2025-2026 exports at about 46.4 million metric tons, down sharply from 51 million the year before. Analysts warn the figure could fall further if China continues to avoid U.S. suppliers. Meanwhile, farmers face a squeeze from both directions. Input costs, fertilizer, seed, labor, and fuel, remain high, while output prices are weak. Cash markets in major farming states show negative basis, meaning producers risk losing money once storage and transport are factored in. Instead of leverage, tariffs accelerated China's diversification, weakened U.S. competitiveness, and left farmers struggling in a market they once dominated. And while American farmers wrestle with losses, their competitors aren't just filling the gap. They're building long-term dominance. Before we delve deeper, do us a favor and smash that like and subscribe button. It helps us reach more auto and trade enthusiasts just like you. Rivals gain ground: South America, Canada, and new supply chains. As U.S. soybean exports weaken, competitors are moving decisively to secure long-term dominance rather than temporary gains. South America leads this charge. Brazil continues expanding acreage and infrastructure, capitalizing on favorable growing conditions and lower costs. Argentina has boosted its appeal by cutting export taxes, making its soy meal highly competitive. Both nations now not only supply China, but also serve buyers in Europe and Asia, broadening their reach. Canada has also strengthened its position, especially in non-GMO and food-grade soybeans. These varieties earn premiums in markets that prioritize traceability and quality. Trade agreements such as CPTPP and CETA provide Canadian exporters with more stable and diversified buyers, giving them a resilience the U.S. currently lacks. Meanwhile, China is restructuring its own system. By reformulating animal feed to use less soy meal, raising domestic yield targets, stockpiling reserves, and supporting local crushers, it has reduced reliance on U.S. imports. This isn't a short-term workaround. It's a structural shift, and rivals are setting the new normal in global soy markets. But these competitive moves abroad only worsen the pressure at home, especially with the 2025 harvest looming. Harvest 2025, market signals and farmer realities. The 2025 soybean harvest arrives under heavy uncertainty. Normally, China pre-books large volumes of U.S. beans between September and January, but this year not a single major commitment has been made. Instead, Chinese buyers secured around 7.4 million metric tons from South America for October, covering nearly all demand, and just 1 million tons for November. Compared to previous years, U.S. farmers could lose 14 to 16 million tons of sales if the freeze continues into winter. Markets already reflect the shift. Chicago Board of Trade futures sit near 5-year lows, while Northern Plains cash prices show weak or negative basis, leaving producers at risk of selling below cost. Even when American beans are cheaper on paper, tariffs restore the disadvantage, pushing buyers elsewhere. On the farm, challenges compound. Weather swings, pests, and disease threaten yields, while fertilizer, seed, and labor costs remain high. Some farmers are pressuring Washington for a trade deal, others are considering crop diversification or alternative markets to survive the squeeze. Which brings us to the political push, and Trump's high-stakes appeals. Trump's push and the trade talks deadlock. As losses mount and export windows close, President Trump has gone public with sharp appeals for China to return as a major buyer. He's urged Beijing to quadruple its soybean orders, openly thanked President Xi, and framed larger purchases as a way to shrink China's trade surplus with the U.S. Talks between Washington and Beijing continue, with occasional tariff truces, but progress remains thin. Many commitments from earlier agreements, like Phase 1, remain unmet. Even if a new deal is struck, the landscape has changed. China has diversified supply with Brazil, Argentina, Canada, and Russia, expanded its domestic production, and reduced reliance through feed and policy reforms. For U.S. farmers, reclaiming lost ground means more than waiting on politics. Tariffs must be lowered, pre-harvest contracts increased, and cost competitiveness improved across seeds, fertilizer, and logistics. Investments in infrastructure and product differentiation, such as non-GMO and food-grade beans, are essential. Above all, policymakers must deliver credible, lasting commitments. The margin for error is shrinking fast, and that sets the stage for the verdict on America's agricultural crossroads. Verdict: America's soybean crossroads. U.S. soybean farming now sits at a critical crossroads. What began as a protective trade strategy has instead accelerated a global shift. China has diversified its supply lines, rivals have locked in stronger positions, and the once stable export engine for American farmers is sputtering. Without urgent changes, from lowering tariffs to securing reliable contracts and improving competitiveness, U.S. producers risk losing not only volume but long-term influence in the global agricultural chain. But this story reaches far beyond the farm gate. Trade wars, shifting alliances, and policy missteps ripple through markets, shaping food security, prices, and even diplomatic leverage. For farmers, it's a question of adaptation. For consumers worldwide, it's about stability in an increasingly volatile world. Before we wrap up, we love your take. Can U.S. farmers realistically win China back? Should Washington remove tariffs immediately, or play tough? Could diversifying crops and markets prove a faster path to survival? Please share your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. We love to hear from you. For the latest updates on the automotive world and more in-depth analysis, subscribe to Piston, Pundit, and hit the notification bell. Thanks for watching and see you next time. You can now check out any of the videos on the screen. There's plenty more to explore.